So to finish up with the phase side of things, I just need to check what the tom mics are doing. We've got in this instance a bottom tom mic, which is a little bit unusual. So zooming in on floor tom 1, it's very nearly starting at the same point, and in terms of polarity, we've got the peak and then the trough and then the peak and then the trough. So they are, at least the polarity is matching on these recordings. So very quickly, just make a little adjustment there. And in all honesty, there's not that much difference with these. So they're already pretty close. Anyway, just doing it by eye, that's fine. And then the same with, let's look at the rack up and down now. And so zooming right in, investigating, well, it looks as though they're both lined up, so that's good. And again, we've got a positive, a peak and a trough, and that matches the top mic, so that's good. I'm not going to do anything to the rack. So just one last little look then at the floor tom 2. They are starting at roughly at about the right spot as one another, so they're time aligned. And we have a peak and a trough and a peak and a trough. So they are in polarity with each other, of like polarities. So they are going to work. They're lined up now. Both mics on all of these toms are going to sound the best that they can sound. So that's that done. And that's it, really. That's the preparation stage done. Let's just check before we move away from these toms what they look like in the overheads. Floor 1, we've got the overheads here, and let's just check the polarity, and you can see clearly there that there's a peak, so that floor 1 is going to be in phase with the overheads. You can also see there actually on the kick out it's also in phase. So it's difficult to check the others visually because they're all kind of happening when other drums are playing at the same time. So it's a bit tricky to check in the overheads of the other tom mics, but we will just rely on our ears for that and make sure that we're getting the full fat sound, plenty of low end into our toms just by using our ears. Okay, so that is the preparation stage, pretty much done. I'm just going to get the waveform back to its original size. So now we've got the phase checked on the toms. Let's start to bring in these bottom mics to see if they are going to be usable. So I'm just going to cycle through this floor tom here and solo the 2 mics. That sounds nice. So just keep that there. The next one, we've got a rack here. It's really just bringing in a little bit of low end extension into that upper tuned rack tom. So the last one to check is just the floor tom 1. Okay, and then yeah, sounds great. Again, just add in some low end extension, and that's helping us out because normally when you're given just one tom mic, you'd go in and add some of that low end with EQ, and we don't need to do that here. We may do a little bit, and if we do, we can do that on our auxiliary buses that we set up for the toms, because now we've shaped our tom sounds with the top mic and the bottom mic. We can now process them on the buses that we created earlier. So that is everything in now on our drum kit, from the kick in all the way to the stereo rooms. And let's play across a tom roll. Yeah, great. I think I was probably a little bit conservative in placing the top mics on the toms. I wasn't quite sure whether we were going to use the bottom mics or not and what they were going to bring. So now I just feel as though they could actually come up in level. I'm just going to push these a little bit. Let's take them up to there, to same sort of place, why not? And then maybe not quite so much with that one, sounds like. Yeah, it's gonna maybe a touch more with that. Yeah, I'm going to listen through a verse just to do any last little adjustments now. Yeah, that's great. Sounding really good. We're in a good spot. So let's move on now. What we're going to do next really is do some EQ. So let's listen to these individual tracks, just see if we need to clean any of them up a little bit. When it comes to EQing drums, there are just really just three areas we just need to consider. Cleaning up some boxiness or low mid frequencies that just don't really complement the sound of the drum. And then we want to look at maybe a little bit of low end and a little bit of mid. That's going to help the transient cut through so we can hear the drum nice and cleanly. So we're looking really at two sort of boosts to enhance the sound of these drums, one at the lower end, one at the higher end. And then we're going to look to cut some boxiness or muddiness out as well. And if need be, we can bring in the very lower end of the frequency response. We can bring in a low cut filter or a high pass filter just to take some rumbly stuff out. And same idea, if there's anything that's particularly harsh or is starting to build up to become harsh in the final mix, we can use a high pass filter to address that. Let's just remind ourselves what this is sounding like with the instrumentation. Okay, what I was doing there, going to the bus where I can process the whole drums as a complete instrument, and I've just boosted a little bit of the 10K on the Pultec there just to bring out the top end of the snare, a little bit more of the kick and the cymbals. Cymbals are starting to get a little bit washy, but we can go into the individual tracks and just tame them a little bit. And played around with the 60 Hertz to see if we could get a bit of thump back into the kick drum. But I've got the kick out mic there for that purpose. Just seeing if we can do it from a top-down approach first of all. Bear in mind also, this is what we do here is going to affect the bass guitar tone. So that's a reason why you may consider to split out the drums into their own group bus and the bass into its own group bus. So when listening with the rest of the instrumentation, just feeling as though the drums need a bit more snap, a bit more top end, a bit more high end, in particular the snare drum and the kick. So let's think about tidying up this drum sound, this kick in mic. Let's see if we can find any boxiness, any kind of beach ball sounds in that kick that we can just pull out a little bit and tighten it up. I'm right there straight away. That doesn't sound particularly great. What I've got here is a preset that is my starting preset for drums, and it's set at some frequencies, key frequencies that I go to every time for drums. So you'll notice that there is, in the lower mids here, it's set around about 370. So anywhere in that sort of 350, 400 hertz area is a good go-to to cut on kick drum. Then in terms of boosting, it's set at 3 kilohertz there, and that's where I'm going to look to add a little bit more of that tap to get the kick to cut through the mix. And then here, this is set at 10k, this shelf, where we can boost and add a little bit of that extra high-end clarity to the tap of the kick drum. We've also then, of course, got our low frequencies down here. We can decide if we feel as though we need to add any lows here, or indeed cut any out. I'm just going to listen to it now with the kick out mic. Okay, sounding good. Just tightens it up a little bit. Just what we need to do is we need to think about all the other instruments that we've got to bring into this mix that are going to live in that sort of 348 hertz area. You can remember, you don't have to go exact here. It's just about what sounds off to your ear and go with that. You don't have to look for exact frequencies. And here, 348, 350, there's going to be plenty of bass guitar that's going to sit there. There's going to be plenty of guitars that's going to sit there. So being able to carve a little bit out of the kick drum and any of the other drums as we go through is going to really help build in that separation. Listen to the drums as a whole. Sounding good, so it ended up cutting by about 3 dB. There's a little bit of sort of mechanical noise, I think, with the kick pedal. It's just getting a little bit of, I think it may be touching the skin slightly, and it's just giving us this kind of slight woofiness that's happening. Now, if we can't hear that in the mix, I'm not too bothered about it, but what I'm going to do as a preemptive measure is just take out some of the really low sub frequencies. Okay, adding a little bit of focus here to the drums, just a little push at 3 kilohertz and another little push at 10 kilohertz, and that really brought the click of the drum out so it was more audible in the entire drum mix. If I just switch out the EQ, you can hear hopefully what we've done here. I'll start with it out and then switch it in. Okay, just made it more focused, gave it a little bit of clarity. Something that's good that I like to do at the same time is a little bit of compression whilst we're here. Great thing about Channel Strip, we've got several tools all in one. So whilst we're here, let's dial in a little bit of compression. And all I'm looking for here is just a little bit of light control. And that usually means just 3 to 6 dBs of gain reduction at a reasonable ratio, which we got set here at 3:1, so not terribly high. So all I just want is just some gentle control. could see down here that the amber light here at about 3 dBs is coming into play. Also gave the impression of the kick drum getting louder. We've got this compressor set. It's not set at a fast attack because we don't want to clamp down on any transients on this kick drum. We want to let the transients come through, and it's at 100 millisecond release. So I'm really happy with how that's sounding. Just playing around with that low cut filter, just with regard to that, the pedal touching the skin. But I'm just going to leave it where it is and come back to that if I can actually hear that in the mix, or if I can hear it on headphones. Let's just solo up the kick out and see what we can do there. So I could do a little bit of cleanup on that as well. I've already got a low cut filter in place there at 34 Hertz. Again, I might like to compress this a little bit, and I'm just going to go through the EQ much like I did with the kick in to just enhance this a little bit more. And so just wanted to take a little bit out of that. It's about 280 Hertz, getting a little bit woolly. And again, a low cut filter just to control any rumbles. Because the kick in really is taking the role of the higher end of the kick, the clicky end of the kick, the 3K and the 10K. I'm not going to explore that here with the kick out, because the kick out's purpose is more for low end. Solo the two together. I'm just doing a bit of a high cut on the kick out, because again it's kind of not necessary. Not that it's causing a problem as yet, but I'm just thinking about other instruments coming in later on in the mix. We're going to have guitars there, vocals there, synths there. So it's about creating headroom, even though it's not necessarily an audible problem right now. Let's try a bit of compression on this. And what I'm looking for there is just to make each hit more consistent. So whilst we're doing this, but I'm also trying to keep as much dynamic as possible, keep a little bit of movement there. I don't want it to be too static. By the same token, the kick is so important in a rock track. We just got to give it that consistency so that it drives the beat. Sounding good. Check it in the drum mix. Yeah, sounding great. Still hearing that flubbing, but yeah, we'll reserve judgment on that till later. Let's move on to the snare then. Snare, Really want to get a bit more snap into this snare. And if we solo up the SM57, you remember that that is the capture that has got the most high frequency content in it. Versus the AKG. It's worthwhile pointing out here the overheads. Overheads have a great impact on how the snare sounds. So let's listen to those. So what I'm going to do here is add a little bit of high frequency here first before I start dialing it into the snare itself. So let's get some high end into these cymbals. I'm just going to back that off a little bit because I know that I'm going to want to do a little bit of saturation here on the overheads. Something else I like to do on the overheads is compression. So let's look at that. Just want to make sure that that snare is being controlled in the overheads, not going to get too peaky, poking out of the drum mix too much. So we're just going for about 6 dBs of gain reduction there on the snare hits in the overheads. Just taking some of those low frequencies out on a bell curve at 400 Hertz, because this overhead track, we decided early on that we're going to use this for cymbals only rather than for a full picture of the kit. So we're just going to clean up the 400 Hertz area. That's sounding good. Let's listen to the whole kit again. Okay, fine adjustments there. So let's listen to this snare. Talked about those key frequencies on the kick drum, and on the snare it's the same principle, looking at 200 Hertz to boost to give us a really big fat snare sound. We're looking at again those sort of 350 Hertz area, even going up to 500 to look for any boxiness, and then we're going to look at about 2.5K to 3K for stick attack for transient pushing purposes. Then we're looking at 10K for the air to give a little bit nicer crispness to the snare snap, to give it that snap. And then, so if we move on to the AKG, this is giving us that fatness that is missing from the 57. So let's see if we can boost that even more. Yeah, really full sounding snare now. Sounding as though it's a little bit quiet in comparison to the kick, because the kick we have applied some compression. So let's do that here to, let's jump back over to the SM57, do that here. A little bit of control, and then on the AKG so again just looking for the 3 dB light and the two of them together. And then I'm going to listen to the whole drum kit to really get the top end dialed in on the snare. And I'm going to do that on the 57. So I'm listening to the top of the snare here. I want to hear some sizzle. So I'm getting some high end there, some sizzle. I think I want a bit more stick attack now. So this is where I'm going to go to the high mids, to the 3K, 3.5K, 2.5K. See if we can find some stick in this. And again, I'm going to do it on the 57. So I'll do it in solo first of all. I think because we'd chosen about a 3K area on the kick drum, rather than overcrowding that area with all these transients, I'm going to choose something a little bit different for the snare. Could be up to 3.5. So I'm going to do that whilst listening to the whole kit. So that sounds much better to me. And also now it's comparable in terms of perceived loudness as the kicks. Let's listen to the rest of the instrumentation now. Okay, so now that we've put some more focus and energy into that drum kit, the rest of the instrumentation starting to feel a little bit quiet. I can see I've got headroom here to push up the level of some of the instrumentation, so I'm going to do that. And you can see that on the mix bus there, we're just getting to about -14. So I'm happy with that. I am feeling though that the snare is taking over a little bit now. Now that we boosted the transient, that snap, it's feeling as though the snare might be a touch loud. So I think I might actually rebalance the snare. A great tip for checking the balance of your snares is to listen at really low levels. So I'm going to do that now. Just going to drop my monitoring down really low. So that's sitting at a good spot now in terms of level. And this is what you need to do when you are adding and taking away frequencies using EQ. You are altering the volume, the balance, the static balance that you've already created. So by making something sound brighter, you're actually making it feel as though it's louder in the mix. And the same, if you dull a sound down, it can sound as though it's a bit too quiet now in the mix. So this is what you've got to bear in mind. And levels are always something that you are going to be addressing till you get to the final stages of the mix when things start to settle down. But as you're in this EQing and compressing stage, the fader balancers are going to take some massaging so that it all works. Whilst you're listening to the whole mix, you can really fine-tune the final positions for your EQ. I'm going to skip over the toms for now. I'm going to go to the hi-hat, solo that up and see if we need to do anything to that. So it'd be really nice to get some compression on that just to even it out so we can hear every hit and it's not quite so dynamic as it is at the moment. So you can hear now that the hi-hat is much more consistent and regular throughout the performance, instead of some hits being too quiet and then some being too loud, and it just evened it out a little bit. Let's do a low cut on this. We don't need all that low end on a hi-hat. And then for the highs, the high end, the sheen, I want to listen to this in the drum mix. So that's the sort of thing, just a little bit of top end. And the technique is to push it too far and then to pull it back and massage it to find the most pleasing position for that high end. Above all else, we don't want the cymbals to get harsh sounding. We want them to remain natural. In bringing in the compressor, I really brought the level of the hi-hat up. So to address that, I just brought the fader down here in the plugin itself. Let's listen to this mono room. And the stereo room. So the rooms are making up a rather large proportion of our entire drum sound. It's giving the spot mics some space. What I want to do is just clean up that space a little bit. Let's do it on the stereo rooms first. Just want to create a little kind of hollow for those spot mics to be able to feel a little cleaner, a little tighter. The rooms are great. I've got lots of great subtleties about them. I mean, this is the whole performance we're hearing here, the whole drum kit. So it's a really great way to bring up excitement and energy, is to make the most of these room mics. And one way that's particularly common is to use compression. So let's get some compression going on this stereo room. And what you instantly hear is it's bringing up all the ghost notes on the snare, which is great. I'm going to just take some of the subs off, the rumbly stuff. I'm going to take the very, very top high frequencies off as well. So there's a low pass filter there at about 12k. Okay, let's do the same then to our mono room mic. Same kind of idea. So that's the EQ, just taking a little bit of the highs off, taking some of the lows off and pulling out some 200 Hertz. When you see me changing the channel number here, it's just a feature of this particular plugin where it gives a different harmonic character. It's very subtle, but I just like to make sure that these have all got different numbers, and that way when you've got them across a whole drum mix like this, it's emulating actually running through a physical console, because not every channel on a physical console reacts in the same way because of all the different electronics. It's all handmade, so it's subtle stuff, but it's just something I like to do, and I find that it goes towards that 3D character. Let's get some compression in this now. Okay, again, it's about bringing up the subtle stuff, and what it is on this mic, it's picking up quite a lot of the hi-hat. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm not going to get myself into trouble there. So I've just decided to use the low pass filter on the channel at 8k to roll off some of the very high frequencies. Let's listen to them both together now. So I'm just going to solo those rooms and bypass the channel strip plugins that we've just applied. You can really hear how it's brought that room to life. On the mono room, I just want to double check that I don't need to bring this fader down here to compensate for the compression. Just brought it down by 3 dB there so that it's more level matched. And then let's listen to the instrumental mix. the level of the hi-hat down with the processing we've done, just starting to get a little bit overly loud there on the right hand side. Let's get these toms into play then. It's sounding pretty good already. Let's listen to them here. This is where we can take advantage of the auxiliaries that we had instantiated right at the start of this, and we can now process the combined tracks on these auxiliaries. I'm going to listen to each one individually first of all to see if there's any cleanup we can do. So that's sounding pretty clean already. Clean up, I'm thinking in terms of ringing or boxiness or low end rumbling that we don't need in the rack tom. So let's take a look at this Trident and the bands that I've got pre-selected here. I've got 250 Hz, I've got 80 Hz, I've got 10K and I've got 5K. And like the kick drum and the snare drum, we want to do the same thing, and that's what we want to clean up any kind of boxiness. We want to accentuate the stick attack, and we want to think about the highs, whether we can do anything there to enhance the sound of the toms. We're on the rack tom at the moment. It's sounding pretty clean already, and I just feel as though it needs just a little bit of focus, that's all. Maybe a little bit of low end. But we have got our rack down track, but there's not an awful lot of low end in that. Let's solo it compared with the top. I'm just going to do a little bit of a phase check here. So they are in phase with one another. And actually for a different flavour here on these toms, I'm going to go to a different channel strip. This channel strip is a Neve emulation. Neves are notably warmer sounding consoles than SSLs. So I want these toms to feel as big as I can get them. I'm going to work on the top rack mic. So when I hear that, I hear like there is a good amount of stick attack. Generally, we look to the 5K to increase that or cut that if it's too much. If we're looking to boost a little bit of low end, then we generally look at boosting about 100 Hz or 180 on this console. That sounds good. I'm not loving how that rack down is making the that rack tom feel. So I'm going to rebalance that, I think. That's better, just kind of pulled it down so it's not quite so present. It was just adding a little bit of a fat, not in a nice way, tone to that rack tom. Let's listen to what it sounds like in the mix now. Yeah, it's got a little bit more presence to give it a bit of a bump there. But I think I may explore adding a little bit more point to it. It sounded as though when you listen to it in solo, it sounds like it's got a lot of stick attack. That click sound, that very tippy top sound. But in actual fact, in the whole mix, it's getting a little bit lost. So I think I'm going to push about 5K. Gets annoying, but sometimes it just kind of helps. Just back that off down to 3 dB boost. And by boosting the gain here, you can get a little bit more body as well. This is on the mic setting rather than the line setting, and so you're able to use this preamp here and drive into the circuitry that's been emulated, and it just gives a little bit of more low end extension and warmth through harmonic saturation. So that's sounding okay. So I'm going to do the same with the floor up. So again, that needs a little bit of point and perhaps a little bit of 180. Check it with the floor down. Sounds nice. Just check the floor down on its own. I may just put a bit of a roll off there on this floor up, and I'll do the same with the floor down. I'm just putting a low cut there at 47 Hz in the floor down and the floor 1 up. Solo this and see whether we get a good result by driving into the circuitry again on this floor up. Sounds good. I just back that off a little bit. As we've previously said, that we start adding EQ and driving into harmonic saturation. In this case, the toms start to get a little bit too loud in the mix, so I might need to address that. So I'm just going to pull those down a tiny bit of dB. So we finish off now with the floor up. Get the neve out. I just put a little bit of a cut there at 47. Give it a bit more point. And a little bit of 180. And let's see if adding a little bit of harmonic saturation helps us. Let's just cycle through that. Yep, I like what that's doing. Make sure what the two sound like together. And in the mix. Nice low end in that floor 2. There is a definite difference in tone between floor 1 and floor 2, which now we've been able to accentuate with the EQ. With that floor down, I'm going to take some 47 Hz off it. And let's just check what the toms sound like now going into that middle 8 section. Just pulled the level of these toms down a little bit because of the boost that we've given them now with the EQs. Just want a little add in a little bit of 5/6 on the floor 2. I'm going to do the same on the floor 1. And might just pull back on the 180 Hertz. Yeah, just gone a bit too far with the 180 Hertz to start to sound a little bit woolly. So happy with where they're sitting at the moment. So let's make use of these auxiliary buses on the toms. Let's do some compression. So I'm just going to change the settings here on this compressor before we even start. Just want to slow down the attack here on the toms. I don't want to dampen down the transient. I'm just going to change it to a more kind of medium slow release here, and let's get some compression happening and dial it in. So we just dialed it in so that we're getting about 3 or 4 dBs of gain reduction. Just adjusting this release so that the compressor is releasing in a natural way so that it's not cutting off any of the sustain of the tom. If I bypass that. So we're getting more of the release. We are getting more of the sustain. The compressor's bringing that up. So that's really nice. So that's the rack tom. Let's look at the floor tom and do the same thing. So we're looking at floor 1. Let's just solo that up. Same idea. Just want to slow this down a little bit, pull this back, and start to get some gain reduction happening. And what's really nice about this compressor is it's got this body dial so that you can either keep this compressor sounding clean or you can give it some character. Just go with it there and then let's check it in the mix. Sounding good. And then finally let's do the same thing to the floor tom 2 and dial in the compression, slow down the attack. Just changing the release, speed it up a little bit because of the way that this particular floor tom has been played in this section. So it makes it just feel a little bit more natural. You don't feel as though the release is still releasing whilst the second hit is happening. So that's compression on the toms for this mix. changing the pan position because I want the rack tom to feel wider in comparison to the floors here. And now that we've got our blend set of the top and the bottom microphones, we've got our compression set now across that blend on our auxiliaries, our tom auxiliaries. We can start to use the auxiliary fader now to rebalance our blended toms. So I might just pull those down a touch, a couple of dBs for now. See if we can tighten up these toms a little bit more with some EQ. Just taking out a little bit of 680, that kind of honky tone we were getting. So remember, these floor down mics on the toms are for capturing low end, and as such you just want to make sure it's not getting a little bit too excited. So I've changed the low cut there to 82 Hertz. Might just pull back a little bit on the 100 Hertz on this. Okay. Sounding tighter already. Let's do the same thing with the floor one. Just want to listen to some of this 680 on this. And on the bottom mic, okay, let's check that out now. Great, they sound much tighter now. Got rid of some of that mid. It was just making them sound a little bit too kind of nasally. See if the rack tom needs to lose any of that. Check the lower. Okay, so that's our toms EQ'd and compressed, both at the same time, because they do have an impact on each other. And by using channel strips, you can get the job done quicker because it's all there in the one tool. And for the toms, I decided I want the toms to sound really big and beefy because I knew that there's this breakdown section coming up with lots of floor toms in it. But we needed to make sure that those toms sounded tight. So we have to do some carving and cut out some 680, cut out some sub frequencies, sort of 80 hertz or maybe 40 hertz, depending on the recording. And then some compression across each tom individually, across each auxiliary for each tom, just to tighten it up, bring the sustain up so that it's closer to the transient of the tom hits, and it just makes for a tighter sounding performance. So that's toms. So we've gone through the entire kit now. We've looked at EQ, we've looked at compression, we've rebalanced the levels as we've needed to because of the changes we've made with EQ and compression. We've also been mindful of checking our moves in context of the drum kit and then in context of the instrumental mix, so we can really make sure that we've made the right decisions when it's come to those EQ moves and the compression.